Hello, here's a bit of an informal video about how I've begun to think about the muscles of the forearm, which I found very difficult to memorize. So I've sort of found a way that helps me to think about it, and I'm going to share it, and maybe it'll be useful. Um, okay, so I'm going to use this drawing software, and basically the reference point we're going to use is brachioradialis. And as you can see on me, if I put my fingers here and I flex a little bit, I think I can feel it. At least to me, it makes sense. It's just about here. So we're going to use that as the center. We're going to go this way first. So we're going to go around one way, and then we'll flip the arm around and go around the other way. And that's going to help remember not just the order of things, but also the innervation. So I'll start by drawing it out, and my handwriting is abysmal, so this is going to be more of a comedy sketch than anything. But we think about it, after brachioradialis, the first thing that comes along here is going to be the so brachioradialis, and then we're going to need something else that's radial, and that's going to be flexor carpi radialis. And so that's the first thing I'm going to draw, and then we'll go into the app and it'll make sense. So I'm going to put flexor carpi radialis, and that's easy to remember because radialis, because we went from radialis to radialis. So we're still in that radial region, so to speak. So the next thing we come from radial, and we know that UR. UR is how I remember the thumb because you'd say UR as a sort of standard phrase in speech. So after radial, I know that I'm going to be in the thumb region, which is pollicis. So the next thing is going to be a flexor pollicis longus. And remember that it's longest because it goes all the way back, and all the other thumb muscles are kind of up there. So the next one we go over, we have pollicis, radialis, pollicis. So the next thing that I remember seeing is the palmar aponeurosis, which is where the palmaris longus attaches. So now we're going to have three stacked on top of each other. So we're going to have palmaris longus, and then beneath that we'll have flexor digitorum profundus, superficialis, and then we'll go one level deeper and we'll say flexor digitorum profundus. And so palmaris longus, flexor digitorum superficialis, of course that one's next deep because it's superficial, and then profundus, profound, deep, so that's going to be the one that's on the bottom. And so there's going to be one more. So we've gone from here, from the radial aspect to the pollicis aspect, the thumb. Then we're in the middle, and we have those three-digit, the palmaris longus, digitorum superficialis, digitorum profundus stacked on top of each other. And now we're heading over to the ulnar, the ulna itself. So we need something ulnar, and that's going to be the flexor carpi ulnaris. So F carpi ulnaris. Now this is where it starts to get a little bit cool. So the brachioradialis is innervated by the radial nerve, and I'll prove that to you shortly. But actually, this whole schematic of looking at things allows you to divide it really simply. So we're going to add one more in, which is kind of in the back, and it's the odd one out, but we'll add it, and it's going to be pronator teres here, teres. And what we're going to be able to do now is draw a line right here. It seems like a kind of lonely line, but it'll make sense. And we're going to say that this is median nerve territory. Right up until here, where, heaven be praised, the flexor carpi ulnaris is innervated by the ulnar nerve. So now we're starting to see a subdivision, and you bet there's going to be another easy way to look at the other compartment, the extensor compartment. And so we'll fill it in, and it'll make more sense when I show you the app. and how to visualize this. But we'll start with, so we have brachioradialis. We always start with brachioradialis. Then we have the extensor carpi. So extensor carpi, radialis, because we're now on the radial side. Extensor carpi radialis longus. So extensor carpi radialis longus. And then we're going to have the brevis component of that. And it's important that we draw it this way. Brevis. So we are at the extensor carpi radialis, and remember after radialis we get pollicis. So we're going to have a pollicis group. And on the extensor side, it's going to go abductor longus, extensor brevis, and extensor longus. So we're going to go ahead and draw those in, and that's going to be extensor pollicis brevis. That's sorry, I made a mistake. Get rid of that. It's going to be abductor pollicis longus, and then we're going to go extensor pollicis brevis, and then we're going to have extensor pollicis longus, like this. And then one more, we're going to keep going deep here, and it's going to be extensor indicis, for the index finger. And then just a couple more. We know that we have the opposite side of the flexor digitorum, that's the extensor digitorum on the back here. So we're going to go back up top, and right here we're going to put extensor digitorum, with my perfect handwriting. And then extensor, so we went radial compartment, the radial aspect rather, then the thumb aspect, just like we did in the flexor compartment in the front. And we went through all the thumb muscles. After the thumb comes the index finger, so that's where the index muscle is. And then all the other fingers, so that's extensor digitorum, except this one. So now we need extensor digiti minimi. And just like we rounded off the last side with ulnar, we're going to round off this side with ulnar. And we're going to get extensor, put it here, extensor carpi ulnaris. And the beautiful thing, and we can put the anconius over here too, if we want, which is back here. The radial nerve innervates all of this business. So now essentially what we've done so far, we're going to go into the app, but what we've done so far is we've taken brachioradialis, so on exam day, we can go like this and go brachioradialis, the thumb comes next, and we can kind of reason from the thumb, to the middle, to the ulnar aspect, then we flip it around, and we're able to do the same thing on the other side, and by drawing it out this way, we also know what is superficial and what is deep, relatively speaking. So this is going to make a little bit more sense. Let me go to the app. So if I open up the app here, and we'll go full screen and make sure that this is in good position. Okay, it is. And put this on the bottom here. Now, so the first thing we're going to do, we're going to scroll into a good view where we can see the brachioradialis, which is going to be all the way on the side, just like we started out with. And then we're going to go from the radial side to the ulnar side, just like we did in the drawing. And what we'll find is, let's see if I can I get both of these things up at the same time. Well, not really. So what we'll find is that we go from brachioradialis, and we remember that the next thing that we found was the flexor carpi radialis. And if you look at what's right next to this, it's the flexor carpi radialis. And then slightly down from that, we drew flexor pollicis longus. That's going to be this guy. Then we moved over and we thought about the palmar aponeurosis. We went from thumb to the palmar aponeurosis physically, just looking at our hand using our physical arm as a mnemonic device. We find palmaris longus, which inserts at the palmar aponeurosis. And then we drew from superficial to deep the flexor digitorum superficialis and the flexor digitorum profundus. And then we went to the side and we saw flexor carpi ulnaris, which is over here. And indeed, that's what we're seeing on this side. And then we don't go any further because that gets us onto the other side. Now the beautiful thing is, if I open this, and you'll see there's a section that says innervation. And we drew a line, we said that this was the radial nerve innervating brachioradialis. And if we go over to the side, we said everything to the left of that, so if we open this up again, everything to the left of brachioradialis in our mnemonic, in our device here, is going to be median until the thing that literally has ulnar in its name. And so if we look, this should be median nerve, and it is, interosseous branch. This is median nerve, innervation median nerve. And we have flexor digitorum superficialis, median nerve. Palmaris longus, median nerve. Please don't do that. Median nerve right there. And then the last two that we drew in were the profundus, and we see that it's the interosseous branch of the median nerve and a little bit of the ulnar nerve, which I didn't properly represent here, but yes, I kind of did. I went through the F. So a little bit of the wrong F, but a little bit of the flexor digitorum profundus is going to be innervated by the ulnar nerve. So if we were to go in and we can just correct this, we'll redraw this line. We'll rule in a little bit of the flexor digitorum profundus, as is indicated here. So we have a little bit of the ulnar nerve, and then we get all the way out to the side, and it's purely innervated by the ulnar nerve when we get to flexor carpi ulnaris. So even in that visual device that we have here, it corresponds. We know that we go from radial in the middle, and then median, and then the last most superficial thing of median is the flexor digitorum profundus, and then the one thing to the left of that is carpi ulnaris, as I'm using my right arm, and that's the one innervated purely by the ulnar nerve. And then we close this, and then we can flip it around. So what I'm doing is highlighting flexor carpi ulnaris, then I can flip us around until we can see it clearly, maybe, right there. Right there. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find brachioradialis on this view. It's a little bit harder. So right there, brachioradialis. We can still see flexor carpi ulnaris on the other side, but we go from brachioradialis, and then remember we need something else that's radial. So we have the extensor carpi radialis. Now here's another device that's built into this. It's longus brevis, longus brevis, longus, right? Longus brevis, longus brevis, longus. So the first thing that we encounter, we only need to remember the name because we're just going to go longus brevis, longus brevis, longus as we go deep until we get to indices. So we close this down, and we have extensor carpi radialis longus. Therefore, this one will be brevis. If this is brevis, we're moving away from the radial side. We need to get to the pollicis area. And if we go right here, we have abductor pollicis longus. A comes before E, so abductor comes before extensor. So abductor pollicis longus has got to come before extensor pollicis brevis, and it does. And then we know after we're alternating between longus and brevis. So if we have extensor pollicis brevis, we'll have extensor pollicis longus. Then we went back to the top of that area and we drew, there was one more, extensor indicus, which is right here. Then we went one more, we went back up to the top, we put extensor digitorum, and after that there was extensor, we said we had to do digiti minimi, and that's going to be right there. And then we had one more, which was rounding it off at the ulnar side, just like we did on the front aspect, or on the ventral aspect, or on the dorsum now, and we're going to round it off with the ulnar again. So we click here, and we see extensor carpi ulnaris, which is right next to flexor on the other side. And just like we said, the device helps you remember the nerves too. We said it's radial all the way to the right. From brachioradialis, look at the innervation field. It's radial. Then we go extensor carpi radialis longus, that's radial nerve. This is radial nerve. This is deep radial nerve, which is radial nerve. This is radial nerve. Indicus, radial nerve as well. All the way over here, radial nerve. And radial nerve again. So it's all radial nerve on the back, and that is something that's captured by this device. We remember median, we remember ulnar, we remember radial all the way to the side. And that's going to help pare things down when you move up to the hand and start to memorize what innervates the different hand regions. You already know if the muscle controlling the action is one of these, you know what innervates it. So that's nice and easy, I suppose, in that way. But that's about it. I hope that helped. One other thing that I noticed was C6 to C7, C6, C7, C6 to C8. So basically between C6 and C8 is what does everything on the extensor compartment. When you flip it around, you're still at C6, C7, C7 to T1. So it narrows it down a little bit, and in the context of understanding the hand and the dermatomes, it's not that helpful, but when you think about the entire body and what's going to be tested on a multiple choice exam, maybe that is somewhat useful. Who knows? But I hope that helped. If there are any questions or corrections, please let me know, and I hope everyone's having a great weekend. Bye.